and I would like to welcome everyone to Pyramids to Spirals, Gamification and Inquiring Minds for Global Skills Workshop, featuring Noish, Lorenzo Gales, and from the University in Catalonia, Spain, and Ray Gallen from the Transformation Society. I turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The first thing we would like to say is thank you to everybody who is here, who's standing. And we prepared this session for a presential situation, so to be there in person. In this remote situation, we've been adapting a lot of things. So we are going to ask your help to get through this specific change. Go ahead.
So thanks. First thing we're going to do is to tell you a little bit about the session. So these were all the objectives that we had put together for that presential session face-to-face. And we're going to try and stick as best as we can to that, so that we follow what we promised to do. Sorry, I'm being a bit distracted here because we're trying to get ourselves set up while I'm talking. But so we're going to start in just a moment. We just remind you that there is a hashtag for the conference that you can use, and those are our Twitter handles if you're interested in using them. So let's get going right away. We're going to approach the question of gamification, and we've called it From Pyramids to Spirals, and you'll see why as we move along. But we're going to look at the what, which is about inquiring minds, the how, which is about the purposes of different skills and the actions that you take, and the why, which is based around interaction and professional development, and that counts for students as well as for teachers. So let's start right away with an activity based around inquiring minds and also levels of awareness. So we're going to start looking for answers, and what we expect is that instead we're going to find a lot of questions. Let's get going. So right now in the chat bot, if you would tell us what these two things have in common.
Well, in fact, you can start writing right now. I hope the chat is working. If it doesn't, just feel free to unmute yourself and say it aloud, because we really don't know if the chat is going to be working or not. You're welcome. We did that before, so we have some answers already prepared, but I see here both are artificial. Good point. It's true.
Huh? Anything else that they have in common?
John, you are invited to say more if you want. We encourage you to do it. But to find a specific element is easier if you think of categories. Vanessa says...
made of plastic.
Good. That's a good appreciation. Okay. Another one, feel free to add different ideas. Just follow the lead of yourselves or the idea that your colleague said. Go ahead. Next one.
Should I give them a hint?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
From what you have in the chat, you missed what's out of the picture. Look at this now. Creative design, that's interesting. We get there now. Something else. Color. Good.
Anything else? We do, in fact, have, of course, a list of our own, and it looks like this. And so
accessories, yeah, good.
The real question here, of course, is, can we classify them? Can we make a taxonomy out of this that we could then use in some way? So I'm going to throw that question back at you. How would you maybe develop, what kind of categories would you build in order to classify these elements and the ones, in fact, that you've put in the chat box as well?
I think they could just think of what they've said. They've said that some of them are plastic, color. Others said they are creative, or they have accessories. Those answers include different abstraction concepts, different levels of appreciation of reality, which comes either from sense or from a feeling. So let's see how we can work with that.
So on the most basic level, we have the actual objects themselves, the explicit components. Then there's things that we have to do with them. Or things that they require of us, mechanical things, movements, and so on. And of course, there's whether we like them or hate them, how we feel about them. What is the dynamic of these objects for us, and how does it make us respond? So having sort of just done very quickly just a little bit of a classification exercise, the next question really that comes up is, what else can we compare? Or in other words, how can we use the same paradigm in other ways in the classroom or in different learning situations in order to help create a different sense of awareness or of consciousness, so that we can help build different levels of abstraction, which allow us to grow and to expand and to find new perceptions. And we can think of these levels as made of these same three components that we were just talking about. So components, mechanics, and dynamics. And of course, I just referred to these three things that have three different levels as components. So I'm already using the same vocabulary and the same thinking to just begin to describe what we're doing.
And in fact, that comes from the gamified pyramid, which is something that they use to organize and create games. In fact, when somebody wants to create a game, usually they relate to the components first. What if they have, for instance, in Parcheesi, they have dice, they have game pieces, or chess. They have the pieces, they have the cupboard, they have the board. But then you also have the rules, you also have the strategies to win, to fail. Those are the mechanics of the game. And finally, what you have is the expectations, the goals, the dynamics, which is related to the way the user or the player organize the universe of the game to really interact with others, or to change their own expectations or their strengths or their weakness. So what we have here is a way of understanding the world. The activity we've just seen shows us that most of the people only focus their attention on components. And you had color, you had plastic or whatever product it is made of. Some of us started working on creativity or those strategies we use to relate with the object. And it's very difficult to focus really on politics, on the strategies to change the game, to organize the strategies for really having a better future. In fact, gamification is something we can use for focusing or changing the curricula. I am a teacher of English, teacher trainer, and inspector of education. We can use the same strategies to teach and learn English, for instance, because they are language-centered elements that we want to put in the curriculum, we want them to use. But we also have student-centered strategies, because according to their own needs or itineraries, we have to change the components, and the way the students relate to the teachers can be different in different contexts. The objective is to use the language learning process to change the whole learning strategy of the student, to help them to understand the world in a different way, to create their expectations for a labor market in a different trajectory, on a different paradigm. So the organization of the curricula, according to the gamifying pyramid, also help us to design a different perception of society, because then you can identify all the elements you need in a lifelong learning process for really improve in your personal or professional life. You also can decide about your own knowledge management or the aids or supports or strategies you do with your colleagues or your students or your teachers to develop your own universe of action. And finally, as a student or as a teacher, you can also create expectations and go in the meta-reflection level to organizing your focus for improving the school project or the teaching techniques, or in this case, even the skills students are going to need for the 21st century. In this paradigm is where we can find international agreements like the fight for sustainable development goals that United Nations had to improve and transform the world. So these three levels, and we'll use them through the whole presentation, will help us to organize not only a specific activity in class, but also the school project or our own learning process as teachers or as professionals. And it's important to see that we need to get to the third level or even further, because we want to transform the world or transform education. The question is always why? And the answer, when we ask that, it's always a component. People say, because technology has changed. And we should start thinking that it's not just technology, it's the way we relate with technology and who is taking decision-making aspects of our lives. So the importance is not just technology or the mechanics, is how we deal with the unknown, how we deal with paradigms that are far away from what we had before. In this specific point, we have an example now. How are we dealing with a pandemic, for instance? Because a lot of times in the school, we think of what we are missing, what we are not learning, and how the exams are a disaster in this pandemic situation. But what's important is what's happening now and what are students learning? What is the society learning? It's not just the components, but the strategies and the dynamics we've included in our tradition. Obviously, our students know more about viruses and vaccines than ever before. And parents and people have been relating to each other in a different way. And we know that globalization is not just a trip to a faraway, very exotic place. It's how we relate to a planet, because we don't have a planet B. So sustainability, solidarity, globalization are those items that we are now learning because we are in a game, a global game, which is very real, that force us to look at the third level of the pyramid of gamification. And that means to put in motion also the objectives that the planet had for improving the world. We talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. We've seen that before, and we had that just bypassing because we'll have a session to talk about this. But it's important to say that education is the fourth here, after the most elemental one for sustainability. And the most important issue is that education helps to understand the others. It's part of the mechanics of the rest of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that this strategy, this system of relationships, are connected to the main aim, which is the objective we have to transform the world. I like also the hole in number 18 at the bottom, because it's empty. And it's empty because everybody of us should have their own piece here. The school, the region, the university, the corporate industry, whatever. Everybody is called to cooperate, collaborate, and be partner of this. And especially in education. Education is understood as quality education because it implies that it is really the main tool for learning to learn. And that's in that sense, reading in different platforms, reading in digital environments, is part of this learning to learn process, the literacy we need for getting the other, to understand the rest of the SDGs. And we have to do it in a multilingual paradigm with different media approaches and in a multimodal technique, with privacy issues, thinking of our personal prints in a digital world, and the ethical changes. So we can start with a second activity, And now pay attention to the tricks, to the tricks we are saying, because the first one you were very component oriented. Let's see how we do that. Okay. Next one. Ray, you go.
So pay attention. We're going to use, there's an app, but probably for this exercise, it'll be easiest to use your mobile phone browser and go simply to their website called Zoom Earth. And you might want to take a screenshot of the instructions on the next screen just to have them handy to follow as we go through it. So let's go. The tool is called Zoom Earth. You see the link there. Pull out your phone, hook up to it. And while you're doing that, I will mention that there is this menu button in the upper left corner that's going to be important to you in navigating it. And here are the instructions as we move from input, that is just receiving stimuli, to intake, which is to say, to pull in information that we can actually use, manipulate, and build hypotheses from. So once you've got Zoom Earth open, the next step is to activate the fires and heat item off of that menu button that you see there. That will show you a bunch of areas that are particularly hot today, or where there are fires burning. So take a look at those and move to one and see if you can find what you think is the biggest one that's there. And try to understand from the application how you might actually measure that area. And I'll give you a quick hint. It's on the right-hand side on the bottom of your screen, of your mobile there. And while you're doing it, and this is sort of what you will see, the kind of thing that you can see when you get that view, and the measuring tool is found there on the right, as I said. Try to pick an area and use that measuring tool. And think about why you're doing it, what you're learning, and most importantly, how can you modify this kind of activity to use in your classroom? And put that in the chat box as you start to work on it, as you start to reflect on those things. Start to write in the chat box what you think is useful, how you can adapt that to work with your students or learners, as you might be working with adult learners, or you might be working in a corporate training environment. Whatever it is, try to come up with what will work for you and how you can adapt that to your yeah.
I was trying to look at the chat because I really don't see anything going on. But okay, just a minute. Let's see if that goes down.
Yeah, when you're sharing your screen, it's difficult to look at the chat. I can definitely pop in. And
Okay, just
know what's going
to
on.
know if people has been able to open that or not. Vanessa or somebody else.
Yeah,
John.
if you have any problems, just shout out to us again in the chat box, or just open your mic and talk to us.
Yeah, because there are not a lot of people.
So we're going to spend about another, what, 5 minutes on this, something like that?
If
Maximum. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So John and Vanessa, you can pop out chat. I'm keeping an eye out. This is Barbara, and let's jump in on the line as we have been invited, and I'm trying it too.
Okay, good. So have you been able to find the heat and burn button on the left?
Well, this is
Hi,
oh, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is John. I haven't been able to find the measuring tool, the measure and find.
The measure is on the right, or at least that's what we saw.
You see that one that looks like a polygon, like a pentagram?
Yeah.
Or pentagon, right?
One is a ruler that made this that just measure distances. The other is a pentagram. If you click on the map, you can just draw a shape, and closing the shape, it shows you the measurement. Could you do that? Well, you see, now we are dealing with the strategies. We are not focused on components anymore. Yeah, when we start doing hands-on, the most important part is knowing, not just knowing, but knowing how. And that's part of what we have in a game also. You can explain a game, but until you start playing chess, you don't understand how it works. That's part of what learning is about, hands-on. So good. Could you find the pentagon, John? Have you been able to do a shape or measure it?
No, unfortunately, I'm not getting that list of tools on the right.
Okay.
I can see the fire spot,
Then,
but not
good.
the tool set.
Good. So probably you have it down, because you can do it on the computer later, and you'll see how it's really easy in a class.
You might want to try scrolling and see if you can.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the important thing as for us as teacher trainers, or if you are in a corporation, is why we're doing that. So the how is part of the elementary training now. The important thing is, what can I use it for? How can I use this to improve my professional skills, my personal learning skills, or whatever? So, okay. Vanessa is measuring some areas. Okay. Well, Vanessa, the good thing is you can change, you can compare different areas. Look for the biggest area burning in the planet right now, at real time, and thinking about what does it mean to have real-time information, and how we can experience with that, but at the same time, how can we use it for planning a better world, for improving information, to fight against fake news. So that's what we are just planning. We want to really, go farther in that. I got it on my desktop, John says. Perfect. Just to show it, okay, we are not going to really go farther with this, but you see how this can be a lesson itself. What I see, how I learn, which is what we were doing now, and why I'll change my life accordingly. Because it's not just about the tool, it's about how we use the information that these new tools provide us. Yeah.
So what we can also see in working with this kind of process is that it follows fairly closely to the Bloom taxonomy that I think most of us are familiar with. What's interesting is that the head of the International Bureau of Education of UNESCO, Mansepse Marope, created recently an extension of these for digital skills, and these lead to new skills that aren't shown here on the screen, but that allow us to go farther with the ideas that that were created originally by Bloom and the second revision that was made of his taxonomy. So we're looking at here groupings of explicit actions, understanding data, remembering information, very, very basic explicit skills. Then implicit skills, which come when we apply knowledge or analyze the skills that we've acquired.
What we were doing just now.
Yes, exactly. And then the next phase, which is sort of what we've asked you to do pretty much, I think, on your own at this point, is meta-referential. So to evaluate values, you know, where are the values in this, and to create attitudes. And when we start doing these things, and if you check out this report that Marope and company wrote for UNESCO, it's very, very interesting. What you see is we're talking about extremely humanistic values that are extremely important for acquiring digital skills and functioning in the digital environment?
Yeah, in fact, we can ask for a meta level reflection here. We are just 3-4 people, so go ahead with that. If you feel free to put it in the chat. If you think that there is something there, because we are looking at the humanistic side of technology. When we talk about transformation in education, a lot of people talk about personal skills. How I have to evolve, how I have to develop or read different platforms or code.
Or learn how to use Word.
Or learning how to use Zoom Earth, for instance.
Yeah, or learning how to use Zoom for that matter. And
yeah, how are you doing that?
yeah.
But the important thing is not me, is the group. How are we going to relate to each other when I know, but you don't? When I have information, real-time information about what's burning and you don't. And I have to buy something and I know where to check the information I need to, and you don't. And this is part of what we think is the dynamics we have to put in the next generation's mind, because they are going to draw their own horizon. They are going to draw their own politics. They are the ones that are going to draw their own utopia. And we are talking about those horizons that United Nations put for 2030, but we are also talking about something further. In 2045, we have already horizon of human heritage. What is to be human? What will be to be human? Probably I won't be here, but in 2045, that will be the question. What is to be human now that everybody will have something embedded or adjusted
or implanted
to work through machinery? Yeah. And this is what we understand and we see in those pyramids, because they correlate. We have Bloom's pyramid and Marope's skills, where you have to remember information, understanding that, applying knowledge, analyzing skills. But we also have those which are related to strategies. Developing strategies in gamification is basic. And it's so important that really they are used for elaborating now the levels of machine learning, smart technologies and pedagogies, and artificial intelligence development of decision making. And it means that we have to focus our attention and help students, adult students, teacher students, and students in the schools to focus on automatic processes that are going to change their labor market. Interaction skills that they are going to need in a hybrid situation where the society is going to be compounded by human agents and technological agents, artificial intelligence agents. And also these dynamics that we are immersing when we still don't know enough that machines are taking decisions in our place. The OECD assessment PISA level are already working with these levels of abstraction. And learning to learn implies to go from the components of the science and disciplines we have today in class into the mechanics. It's not just knowing about how to describe a phenomena, but how to design scientific inquiring processes or evaluating the ones that we use now, and even implementing data and evidence scientifically, trying to improve the ethical baggage, the ethical ecosystem where it happens. And this is a recursive system. The 1 and 2 PISA levels, or the 3 and 4 PISA levels, or the 5 and 6 are just identified as components, mechanics, and dynamics of pedagogy. And it means we have to repeat the process of those circles of improvement for helping students to understand patterns. We are not really having enough time for doing everything, so I just wanted to show that we had another activity where you had to show the components you could see here. For instance, Ray, you're there.
I see 2 bears and a bat.
If somebody wants to say what you see in this Russian ink piece, you feel free. But the important thing is not what we see, is how we organize information. That's what the psychologists do. They focus on the mechanics and even the dynamics of it. They look at the categories you organize, the failures or doubts. They look at the dynamics of movements. They don't look at the bear you said, but the color you didn't mention. They were putting the attention of symmetrical things or
It's
asymmetrical
a
things.
wine-colored.
It's a wine color. That's good way, right? And it means that we have to look at reality in a different way, not only seeing tables and chairs or planets and sun to draw the specific system. We have to look at the shapes that change when the sun moves, and we have to do all the work that is related to it, because that changes our specific point. And we have to share that with others, because that will help us to have different points of view that will help the students to really understand the collective imaginary. So they will help to create a common starting point for solving problems. It means we don't have to look at circles that we already have, like that one, that pack that everybody use, but how they relate to change, how they relate to evolving into this improvement system of values that we really want to develop with the Sustainable Development Goals. And here we have three main issues that we have to pay attention when we use those models at that school. And it's based on the same idea of gamification. And I'm going to invite John, if he's there still, to identify the most important part of this chart, which is one of the charts of stimulus and inquiring or reaction we have. But I'm going to help you reading it through our clue points. How would you describe this one, especially thinking of this spiral of iteration? John, do you feel ready for this? Yeah.
How would I interpret it?
Well, more than that, what do you think it's important here? And the tip.
What do I think?
Yeah, the tip is in the spiral we put. So
yeah, I think it's the fact that it's moving, it's dynamic.
Yes, yeah, perfect.
Like
it's
I
dynamic.
Look at the two arrows in the middle, and
Good.
that that this framework is evolving.
It implies, thank you. It implies a certain change of role, if you want. And we are repeating the same systems, components, mechanics, dynamics, but it implies changing situations. Good. We have another one. I'm going to do the same. It's not just explaining the chart, because we don't have enough time to do that, but it's thinking that when we have a stimulus and response, sometimes we put inquiring in the middle, in between, because it helps us to practice and reflect in a different way, interacting inter and intrapersonally. And now I'm going to ask Vanessa. Are you still there, Vanessa? How would you interpret that if we talk about interpersonal relationships? What's the most important part here?
Okay.
Good.
So we're talking about the inquiry cycle?
Yeah, for
Okay.
instance, yes.
Okay. So how,
the previous one was also inquiring, but this one has something in addition.
Right.
Which is,
So there's the color coding, but there's this, it's different in how there's something in the middle, right? Like there's a thing in the middle that doesn't have that same cyclical movement, but it's also like overarching. It's like always part of it.
Yeah, it's the core, core essence. Yeah, because it's related to interaction. It's related to collective analysis. So reflection is not just something that happens inside me. It's something that I have to share with others at every stage of the cycle. So that's the story, interpersonally and intrapersonally, in the sense that we really need to learn socially, interacting. Self-agency, relational strategies, and transformation dynamics through the interaction with others. We have another one. I'm not sure where the third one, Barbara. Well, I don't know if she's there, but the one.
I'm here. I'm thinking.
Oh, perfect. Good. I have a third one for you because I see the time is running. But look, this one is not just inquiring in the middle. We have inquiring everywhere. And look what we've done. We've put the key here. Can you explain that through the tips if you want? Because this is a very interesting one. What do you see here?
Well, just what you mentioned before about learning being like a social practice, it just made me think immediately that if I have a problem, I explain it to someone, I get a feedback, so that kind of swirls back in. If I look at your diagram on the left, swirls back into my thinking. So that's this constant kind of process in a way. And technically, I guess if we're labeling it, I am trying to find my focus. I'm trying to redefine it. I'm trying to ask more questions. I'm trying to develop plans and going through those movements.
Yeah, it's not just recursive, it's fractal.
Fractal.
So yeah, it really is embedded in that. Perfect. I think you're the best.
Oh no, there's no best here. We're all learning.
Well, it's fractal in the sense of self-similarity, that you have these spirals embedded in spirals, and they can go quite deep.
And the support with others comes by creating links, values, and trust. And
Yes.
that's part of the issue itself. We don't have enough time to go through this, but we'll have other presentations where we'll talk more about how that is important to develop learning in social interaction. So the one I was going to present here, and I'm just going to run through this one because you know that probably, is Judy Harlan and Linda Kasser. They are Canadians. They were in Catalonia. And I was very happy working with them, with the schools that they were teaching at. And it was really interesting to see how their spiral was also connected with the idea of components, the idea of mechanics and strategies, and the idea of dynamics and trying to change the world. So it's interesting how pyramids and cycles, or in this case, spirals, just collate and coincide in a specific vision of working together for a better world. And that's what we wanted to put. We should help students to find their strengths and talents, their priorities, and especially the projection and change they can make in the world. I love this picture, as you can see. But it's just looking around, find community purpose, start moving. And that's the challenge. That's the engaging students inquiring that we want to really bring to our classes. Because the best teacher is not that teaches what they know, but that who moves students to learn an inquiry about what nobody knows yet. The smallest thing or the biggest thing. I was thinking of the drone that was yesterday moved in Mars. They are creating new jobs there. They are really creating new ways of doing minery or exploring, doing research, or even doing art. We really have to work with that in the schools, because that's what the Sustainable Development Goals is about, the future. And we have a challenge.
We do, because if you look at this image, which represents a COVID-19 classroom, primary school, what you see, of course, is students keeping a good, safe distance, wearing masks and so on. And we've already, I think most of us, gone through all the business about it's difficult with the face covered, you don't see facial expressions as well, all the rest of it. But what we maybe haven't taken enough into account is that what we have here is a series of singular mono-channel communications. So this is a little bit like a broadcasting situation, say a radio station, where you have one transmitting tower that is sending a message out to lots of radio stations all over the place, or lots of radio receivers rather, but they are isolated from each other. Those radio receivers are not communicating with each other. And this is what we're missing because of these requirements of the health situation today. So our kids are lacking that kind of mutual inquiry. Now, of course, they can talk to each other, but we know that kids, for communicating, they need to touch, they need to interact, they need to move. And this is what they're not getting. So the challenge that we have today is what substitute can we create? How can we replace this aspect that they're not getting? Can we do it through online communication? Can we do it in a classroom and still provide the kind of protection that we need to provide in this pandemic situation? And that also leads us to questions about what is fact, what is real, and how do we deal with facts? And we heard this morning in the keynote that a fact may not be really a fact. We've heard talk about post-truth. And so we need to not only learn to interpret facts, but also learn to check and verify the facts or information that we get that is presented as facts, and learn to understand how to read it, how to interpret it, and how to use it. Along with that, of course, concomitant with the whole pandemic situation is the question of mental health and how people are being affected. We have so many, especially I think teenagers, who are very, very desperately affected by the fact that they cannot get together in groups. And there's so much now being put out in the media about this problem that we really have to start to deal with it. And so far, I think we're not dealing with it adequately.
That's why we really think that we have to start organizing our sessions around inquiring in groups and social learning. And we don't have the time to go long through this, but I'm going to ask you a complicity to just narrate it very fast, because it's an activity that really helps us to see what's hidden. And that will help us to see how can we understand why we need to ask recursively about everything. Well, the first question is simple. What are you seeing here? What's going on? Are you positive, optimistic, or are you a pessimistic person? All of you, can you please say if you think he's going to fall or he's going to just recuperate the equilibrium? Barbara, John, what do you think about it?
I wrote in chat, it's going to hurt. I think he's going to fall.
Yeah, no, it's true, but great illustration. That's true. Thank you. So fall, hurt. Oh, I think we have, Ray also said he's already on the ground.
I said he was already on the ground, but that was because I didn't know how to read the picture. Once I read the picture, I thought he was going to fly off with the wings on his back.
Oh, you have that sort of shadow behind. It's a very interesting picture to show components, actually. But the important thing is that we find here people who are very pessimistic, people who are very optimistic. I'm optimistic. I think they will just move on. Well, why is this important? Why is it important to know if you are pessimistic or optimistic? Well, if you're pessimistic, people are likely to be offered discounts on an insurance contract. And it's true, it's proved. Optimistic people are more likely to receive offers to contract loans for buying a house. And you can ask, why? Again, try to ask always why. Well, because artificial intelligence algorithms are already running decision-making in banks, and they have your identity print, they have your resiliency according to what you've checked or seen or just gone through in Facebook or in Twitter or whatever.
So Neos, you are actually admonishing us to be like our own little kids and always saying, why?
Yeah, grandparents has affected you. Yes, because we need to face new needs, new talents, but also new ethical jobs, new situations in a hybrid and uncertain global world. Because what we have today is what we are creating, and the difference between what we have today and what we want to have is what we do every day. I love this picture also because it's just a third generation person, is just an elderly person teaching the young kids to plant, even if they don't have a lot of water for sharing together to improve it. And we see that in our classes and in our books. I studied English as a third language in that moment, and I started with simple present, present continuous, and simple future. Or I was happy a little some years later when they start showing animals or professions or climate because they had pictures. Well, both are components. They are not really focused on anything else. When I started being a teacher, I had lessons in the units that was at the zoo, at the restaurant, at the cinema, meeting friends, crossing France. Then they were putting the student in the picture. So we had strategies to go and people were meaningful. What we have now, when I teach in the university, my teacher students, they have lessons that they say, save the whales. They say, join UNESCO school projects. They say, fight against climate change. That's something we are already using and we are already focusing in the schools, but sometimes we are not really alert and aware that it already is something that goes through the Sustainable Development Goals. And when we talk about it, we have to think of why we do it, how we do it, and what we do, how we do it, and why. This activity is to be developed and adapt. I would like you just to see that as a synthesis of the whole presentation, because it uses the recursivity of the spirals we've been talking about, the levels of pyramids, and at the same time, it goes direct to personalization and using the personal itinerary that different people can get through. And it's simple. We ask students to look at 3 of these Sustainable Development Goals that can explain each other in a relationship. So we look at 3 components that have certain cause-effect explanation. I just asked once Ray, who hadn't seen this one, and he said, for instance...
Well, the answer that I gave you was clean water, hunger, and clean oceans.
And I asked you, okay, can you relate that? Can you explain, make a story with it?
Yes, we need clean water so that people can grow their crops and eliminate hunger. And that requires the oceans to also be clean because the ocean is the source of water, or one of the sources of water.
This idea should be expressed at least in 2 formats. And we have here that idea of focusing on language, evidence, mental strategies, argumentation, and it's an individual itinerary. It's not everything or everybody has to do the same. It's just personalization. So it is a very flexible way of dealing with the Sustainable Development Goals, but at the same time, it helps students to express their ideas and to explore the sources and digital sources you have. Well, imagine everybody has done it. John, I suppose you have your own ones. I had water. If we have clean water, we can have better food, and then we'll stop wars because people won't move so much. Well, whatever you have, in the second level, we have to share, we have to interact, and we have to find a common purpose. So the task here would be find at least 2 people, in this case, any of the group, that can share the cards they've selected, their own narration, to explain or solve some of the problems you've detected in your own interpretation in this first stage.
So I use my cards to help you solve your problematic.
And if not, I will ask you to improve yours because I need it. Or I will ask Vanessa, because we can be 3 people here, for instance. The important thing is to create criteria by adding information, exchanging information, interacting, asking for something, inquiring for something, asking for help. That's the part that really brings to knowledge. It's the part that would be similar to working together to find out something in Earth, in Zoom Earth before, how we do it. Okay, John, can you suggest us something to solve our problem? For us, it was lack of water will bring hunger to everywhere. And in my case, they will produce wars.
Problem.
Which one would you use to help and solve that one?
Okay, go ahead.
No. It's in the second, in the second layer, in the second line. Which one were you going to say?
Oh, ooh. To address literacy, we need to invest more in education.
Good. That's good. I can
Is
say,
that
yeah.
okay? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying education can help us to know how to clean the water or how to improve negotiating strategies for avoiding wars, for instance. So it's just trying to help people to find new ideas, to combine them, and to invite others to even look for more information. If we don't know how, we are allowed to build our criteria looking for more information. Okay, that's the second level of the session. Vanessa, would you include something else now that you mentioned that you liked asking for help? Or that was Barbara, maybe. So some help here? No? Yeah.
Oh gosh. So we're saying adding to.
Yeah. Where could we go and look or search, or what could we do to increase the possibilities of solving our problems in that sense? For instance, I was thinking of we need more clean water to stop hunger. Is it a way of having vegetables in a garden without water? Where could we go and see that? Is it possible? Can we have it with little water? Do you know anywhere where we could just check? We have some tools here. Google Earth will show us winds, and Google Zoom Zoom Earth will show us winds, rain, fires. They don't show you really dry, clean water. Any suggestion?
Hi, it's Barbara. I'm going to jump in.
Oh,
Maybe I'm probably wrong, but I would think maybe go to our local governments and
good.
Statistics, look at the history and the evolution of, and then from there maybe start investigating what specific departments or areas are doing to try and keep our waters cleaner and all of that. It's all part of, I think, the research of doing this before you come to a solution.
Perfect. So we can go and see the history of a country. If they have now oranges in the desert, how they've done it. We can go to see the plan of a government. We can go and see those input that our colleagues can suggest are also open windows to explore more. And that's what we try to find here. Find a common purpose to increase together our knowledge of something. Because the third one, and thank you, Barbara, the third one is to work out a common plan with the six Sustainable Development Goals. We really want to show a project, maybe an art piece, maybe a music session together that we can share with others, showing what we've done to explain our ideas. The idea is we've been using the universal design for learning from our personal need to explore the Sustainable Development Goals. We've kept people engaged because they've chosen their own interests. They have represented the world according to their own level of knowledge, and they suggest action together after, receiving inspiration from somebody in the group. And that's what we have to help the students do, using not only the components of the subjects in the school, but to develop their strategies to interact and find their own horizons. That's part of what we wanted. We are the result of the studies we did before and our parents' concerns, but we are the ancestors of the next generations that will fix the present. So thank you for bridging the gap. Thank you for being with us and sharing everything. That's all.
I think we have a couple of minutes for one or two questions, Barbara?
Absolutely. You've got a full great 3 minutes. Everyone, we're on a schedule here. I have my marching orders. You can always chat or you can jump in on your phone.
Okay, good. So we had two work. The idea is gamification is a tool. It's another tool, but the aim is really important. So join us for the next presentations if you want to learn more or share more with us, because what we ask people is to present for us, as we've done today. Thank you.
And it's Barbara again. I just want to say, like, I'm looking forward to spending some time with your slides that I know are going to be uploaded at the site.
Yes.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of information there, at least for me. I'm feeling that I need to digest a little bit, but I like the perspective that you bring, because I find that at the foundation, it is that we can't go at it alone. We have to work well with others, but each of us has a responsibility to make those efforts, to be kind of self-aware and cognizant of ourselves in order to be able to sometimes maybe get past maybe whatever prejudice or judgments that we have, so that we can actually try and make an impactful change. I don't know if that was a mouthful, but you sure got me thinking this afternoon.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barbara. That was actually a wonderful synthesis right there.
Thank you very much. And thank you to John, Vanessa, Nadine, and the rest of you for being here and sharing this with us.
So since we have a minute left, I don't see any questions in the chat outside of thank you. I am going to thank you both for this very lovely, delicious recipe for my mind that I'll be taking, as I'm sure everyone will. And I invite everyone else to check the schedule at the site. And I will shut down the recording. I thank you all, and we shall meet again virtually.